as more scandals have hit the news. We have so much to keep track of. So many times we'll say that we'll never forget, but that's hard to do. I'm trying my best to make sure we don't forget about Sergeant Tahmooressi, who remains in a Mexican jail. I actually spoke with his mother again, and we'll have another article coming out really soon on his condition. But in the meantime, Wayne Allen Root is one of those helping me to keep Sergeant Tahmooressi in the news, and we appreciate that. So we have him here today to join us. Welcome back to Smart Life, my good friend Wayne Allen Root.
Hey, Gina, how are you?
I am doing well, and I just appreciate so much you're keeping this story in the headlines. Wayne, what's the latest on Sergeant Tahmooressi as far as you know?
Well, I mean, the latest, I just wrote something that you probably don't even know about that was at the Blaze today. The headline is Obama's Benghazi terrorist scam. And what I said is, let's compare the situation here with our hero Marine being, who has been tortured, literally, depending on your definition of torture. I think being tied at 4 points to a bed and then a guard comes in and kicks you and people withhold water and food, I call that torture. And so our hero Marine's been tortured in a Mexican prison and given no Miranda rights, and yet Barack Obama thinks we can bring a horrible terrorist mastermind to America and give him his Miranda rights and treat him as he's innocent until proven guilty like any other American citizen. I find that dichotomy, that comparison, to be sickening. I mean, just nauseating. It's horrible. How do you take a hero Marine and let our friends in Mexico mistreat him and give him no rights, and the president really says nothing about it and really doesn't protest loudly or publicly, and then you allow a terrorist murderer mastermind into our country and you treat him with kid gloves?
Yeah.
I'm sure any FBI agent that questions him knows they'll lose their pension and their job if they even touch a fingernail on him. So it's pretty scary what's happened to our country and how far we've fallen.
Yeah, maybe you understand more about this than I do, but I thought the big fight was to get those 100,000 signatures on the whitehouse.gov site, because then this president had to somehow respond to we the people. But there's been zero response, virtual crickets from this administration in defense of our hero, who, by the way, has served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan and has suffered post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of it, and desperately needs treatment that he isn't getting. Even if he did something wrong, which I don't even think anyone is really accusing him of actually breaking any laws other than accidentally taking, and by the way, calling 911 and admitting it and disclosing it as he was crossing the border to the officials there. This guy wasn't trying to sneak guns over. But nonetheless, even if there was something he did wrong, isn't it right to bring him back to the United States and try him here where he can get treatment for his PTSD rather than leaving him to rot in a Mexican prison? I don't understand why the president hasn't been forced to respond to this.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think a lot of Republican leaders are making a big deal about it either.
Great point.
Have you noticed Eric Cantor making a big deal about Sergeant Andrew Tahmooressi? I didn't,
no.
But I did notice Eric Cantor losing his primary race.
Yep.
So maybe there's a connection there. I've made that comment. I don't know that it's because of Andrew Tahmooressi, but I do know that the American people, and particularly, Tea Party patriot type people like you and me, have very different moral values and very different opinions and beliefs than the people in Washington, D.C., the GOP establishment. Forget about Obama. We know we have nothing in common with the Obamas of the world. But even with the John Boehners and the Eric Cantors and the John McCains and the Lindsey Grahams, I call them rhinos, Republicans in name only, they just are living in a bubble in D.C., and they don't see the same things you and I do. To me, a hero Marine who saved lives on the battlefield, rotting away in a Mexican prison for no reason, suffering, being kicked in the guts by Mexican guards, is one of the most important issues on my plate in the whole world, right up there with the economy. But to the people in Washington, he's just some Marine stuck in a prison, and they probably think maybe he deserved it, he did something wrong, maybe he's a bad guy. Who knows what these stuck-up elites in Washington think, Gina? But they don't think like you and me, and I think that's why Eric Cantor lost, because he's not understanding that immigration is a giant issue. You know what I keep saying? We have a crisis on the border. It's exploding, and we've got a Marine hero rotting in a Mexican prison. All of these things are happening on our southern border, and at this moment in time, this is when you want to pass immigration reform. Don't you think maybe you ought to straighten this stuff out before we reward Mexico and give Mexican immigrants and Mexico itself, a big slap on the back and a big kiss and say, everything's fine now and we're going to give amnesty to all your people? Shouldn't we first get our friends to give our hero back?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it, my friend. And I talked to Mrs. Tahmooressi about this, and I will be reporting this interview very soon. But she essentially said the Mexican government has been pretty much more receptive than the U.S. government. Go figure. Thank you for being on top of this story, my friend. Wayne Allyn Root. We've got all his stuff up there for you. You can find him on Twitter at Wayne Allyn Root.